My name is Brittany Wheeler, I'm 28, and for most of my life, I was the invisible one in my own family. We lived in Norfolk, Virginia, a place where honor rank and military tradition were practically etched into the walls of our home. My father, Craig Wheeler, served 25 years as a Navy officer, and my mother, a high school history teacher, lit up whenever she spoke of his deployments. But the real star in our household wasn't my dad, it was my sister, Rachel. Rachel was 3 years older than me. She graduated top of her class from the Air Force Academy and quickly made captain. Her medals decorated our living room wall like museum artifacts, and her glowing letters of commendation were framed with the same pride most families reserve for diplomas. Whenever guests came over, they heard the latest "Rachel just did something amazing again" story. Me, I was just Brittany, the one who does something with computers. Even as a kid, I was different. I loved coding, robotics, and tech competitions. But every time I brought home an award, my father barely nodded before turning to Rachel to ask about her latest intelligence briefing. Once I won a state award for building a drone that monitored coastal erosion. All he said was, "Nice. But what are you going to do with toys like that?" Rachel never missed a chance to mock me either. "Brittany, you're wasting your potential. Why don't you do something real like I do?" It stung, but I never fought back. I was used to it. I learned to stay quiet, to swallow my disappointment and let it burn beneath the surface. What they didn't know was that I'd chosen a different path, quiet, dangerous, and far from meaningless. A path that would change everything. They just didn't know it yet. I used to think that if I tried hard enough eventually, Dad would see me not as Rachel's shadow, but as someone worthy in her own right. I threw myself into everything science, sports, leadership. I wasn't just a coding nerd, I was captain of my high school swim team. I led our debate squad to nationals. But every medal I brought home got the same reaction from Dad, a nod, like I'd just won a participation ribbon in kindergarten. I remember the day I won first place at the state science fair for a coastal erosion monitoring drone I'd built from scratch. I came home beaming, certificate in hand, ready for at least a pat on the back. Dad looked at it, skimmed it, and placed it on the table without a word. "Rachel, how's your latest intel report coming?" he asked, like I wasn't even in the room. I remember smiling awkwardly and walking away, still holding the certificate. Mom tried to smooth things over, she always did. She wasn't as harsh as Dad or as smug as Rachel, but she also didn't exactly have my back. "That's an interesting project, Brittany," she said. "How does it work?" But before I could answer, Rachel chimed in. "It's just one of her little tech toys, Mom. Not going to get her very far." I said nothing. I was used to my voice being drowned out at the dinner table. But inside, I cataloged every slight, every dismissive look every time I was made to feel small. I didn't want to be Rachel. I didn't need shiny medals or applause from Dad's Navy buddies. I just wanted to be seen for who I was. Quiet, determined, capable. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd crumble because I wasn't the family pride. But that silence they forced on me, that's what forged the steel. When it came time to apply to colleges, my dad laid a stack of Annapolis brochures on the kitchen table right in front of me. "With your record and our Navy connections, he said you could get in if you're serious." Rachel sat across from me, nodding like she already saw it as a done deal. She'd walked that path, and everyone expected me to follow, carry on the Wheeler legacy. But I chose differently. I applied to Virginia Tech to study computer science, specializing in cybersecurity. When my acceptance letter arrived, I nearly cried. Mom gave me a weak smile. "It's a good school." Dad just muttered, "At least it's not far from DC." Rachel pulled me aside at her deployment barbecue and whispered with a smirk, "Virginia Tech. Seriously, Brittany, you're settling." Playing it small, I bit my lip and stayed quiet, because I knew none of them understood. They thought I was playing it safe with some boring desk job. But I had a plan. That degree wasn't just a diploma, it was a key to a world they couldn't even imagine. After graduation, I shocked them again I'd joined the Navy. Dad raised an eyebrow. The Navy. What's some intel desk job? His tone made it sound like I'd taken a step down from Rachel's high-flying Air Force path. Something like that, I said, keeping the truth to myself. Rachel laughed out loud. Brittany in the Navy. Good luck pushing papers in San Diego while I'm out saving the world. That night I overheard Mom and Dad in the kitchen. She's always been different, Mom said quietly. Dad sighed. Different isn't enough. Rachel makes us proud. Brittany. She's just lost. I shut my bedroom door, my heart heavy but not broken. Their words didn't crush me. They fueled me. They sparked a fire they couldn't put out. I was going to prove them wrong even if they never knew. I didn't join the Navy to sit behind a screen. I had a goal: special warfare. No one thought I was capable, and no one knew I was secretly training for one of the most elite and classified selection programs in the military. On paper, I was just a naval intelligence analyst. But that was only the cover. Back home, my parents thought I was doing reports in an office in San Diego, just like they'd predicted. Rachel would occasionally text me jabs like "run out of printer paper yet," or "still crunching numbers while I'm flying missions over the Middle East." I didn't respond. I didn't blame them. They had no idea I was waking up at 5 a.m. to run with a 60-pound pack swimming in frigid water and studying combat tactics with unrelenting focus. It was during Officer Candidate School OCS that I met Commander Robert Foster. He was the first person who truly saw something in me, not just my scores, but my grit. After a simulated cyber attack drill where I stopped a full breach of the base's system, he pulled me aside. "Wheeler," he said, "you've got raw instincts. Ever considered special warfare?" My heart pounded. Special warfare, one phrase that intimidated even the toughest men, let alone women. But he continued. "There's a pilot program launching. It's classified. Brutal. But if anyone can do it, I think it's you." That night, I submitted my name. It was the Navy's experimental pathway for integrating women into SEAL-level ops. By day, I kept my intel job. But off the clock, it was relentless training, physical endurance, tactical simulation, and mental toughness drills. I didn't tell anyone, not even Mom. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I knew if I failed, I'd fail quietly. But if I succeeded, then every word they'd ever used to belittle me would echo back and fall silent. I'll never forget that first morning at the training compound. No welcome speech, no sympathy, just shouting mud and a cold that shook you to your bones. It was the Navy's first experimental SEAL pipeline open to a select group of women. No one there wanted us to succeed. Hell, they didn't even want us there. We were kept separate from the men at first. Every morning before sunrise, I swam miles in open water, dragged tires across sand, and learned land navigation in brutal conditions. The guys on the other side didn't trust us. To them, we were just PR stunts. One of them, Harris, big and cocky, laughed when he saw me carrying the same weight pack as him. "This ain't a place for dolls playing soldier," he sneered. I didn't answer. I let performance speak. I beat him in the swim, outscored him in navigation. He didn't talk much after that. Hell Week was the worst. 5 days of no sleep, pounding surf in your face, heavy logs crushing your shoulders, freezing water in your boots, and instructors screaming in your ear. One night during a boat carry on the Pacific coast, 2 guys on my team rang out, "Quit." The bell echoed in the distance, a reminder that failure was always lurking. I gripped the paddle and shouted, "Switch sides. Martinez left, Collins right. Keep it steady." We didn't just survive. We outran 2 other teams. Afterward, Chief Perry gave me a nod. No words, just respect. I felt it. But the real test was pool comp underwater confidence training. The instructors tangled my air hose simulating a dive emergency. I couldn't breathe. I signaled to my swim buddy Sarah, but the instructor held her back. My chest burned, panic clawed at my throat. Then Rachel's voice echoed in my head. "You're wasting your life." I clenched my fists, focused on the knot, worked it with trembling fingers. When I finally surfaced, gasping, my eyes were stinging, but I wasn't panicked. Sarah grabbed my arm. "You okay, Brittany?" she asked. I nodded, too breathless to speak. That night in the barracks, she sat next to me. "You held your breath longer than most of the guys here," she said quietly. "You're tougher than they think." That meant more to me than any medal I'd ever seen hanging from Rachel's uniform. I passed Bud S., one of only 3 women to make it through. The dropout rate was around 85%. By the end, we weren't female candidates or pilot program trials, we were warriors. But when I got my first assignment with a rapid response counterterrorism unit, I still felt the stares. I was listed as the team's tactical and intel officer. 6 men, all battle-hardened. Sarah, my swim buddy from pool comp, got assigned a few weeks later. To be honest, I'm not sure I would have made it through the transition without her. One guy, Daniels, didn't trust me from day one. Every call I made during training, he second-guessed. It lit a fire in me, but I stayed calm. I knew I couldn't win them over with emotion. I had to lead with action. My chance came quicker than I expected. During a hostage rescue simulation in Nevada, our planned exfil route was compromised. Chaos hit for a few seconds. I didn't hesitate. Redirect. Bearing northeast. Follow the secondary path I'll lead. Daniels hesitated, but Sarah didn't. "Follow her," she said. The team followed. We executed a perfect extraction. No casualties. When we got back to base, Daniels walked up, gave me a curt nod. "Good call, ma'am." 4 words, but they changed everything. From then on, I wasn't the female officer or the odd one. I was Brittany Wheeler, their commander. The months that followed were filled with classified ops, recon raids, hostage pulls, and live intel retrieval. I couldn't speak about any of it, not even to family. I came home bruised and bone-tired after each deployment, but I never complained. I chose this life. Rachel still sent her usual digs, still pushing papers I'd reply with one word, busy. They still thought I lived in the shadows, never realizing I was leading others through them. After every op, I came back stateside with 2 bags, one full of gear, the other full of silence. No one waited for me at the airport. No welcome banners. Just me, an unnamed SEAL officer, stepping out of the shadows and slipping back into the role of Brittany, the boring naval intel girl. I'd crash for a few nights in temporary housing near base, eat canned food, and reread my mission debriefs just to remind myself that what I'd done was real. Sometimes when the quiet got too heavy, I'd check my phone. A text from Mom. "Are you eating enough, or Dad?" Hope work's going well. They didn't know anything, and I couldn't tell them. But Rachel, she never missed a beat. Still stuck in that paperwork job? Don't forget to file on time. Just flew into Germany. You still staring at spreadsheets? I'd type out angry replies, then delete them. What was the point? She didn't know and didn't care to know that the screen I looked at daily streamed live drone footage from war zones, that I analyzed heat signatures of active threats, that I made real-time decisions that determined whether a team lived or died. She didn't know I'd crawled across rooftops in Kabul under flare fire, that I'd ordered an emergency extraction under enemy fire and saved 12 lives in 4 seconds flat. And I didn't tell her, not because I was afraid, but because I'd learned how to wear silence like armor. Silence was where I grew. Silence was my strength. I almost didn't go to Rachel's promotion party. I'd just returned from an op in Syria, my body still sore, my head still running, mission protocols. I had 3 days of downtime, but Mom called, voice full of hope. "Brittany, it's a big day for your sister. The family would love to see you. I knew the family didn't include me. But I flew to Virginia anyway, rented a car, and drove to the hotel ballroom, bright buzzing with Air Force officers, Rachel's friends, and the usual crowd who nodded at her every success. I walked in wearing a simple navy blue dress. No uniform, no insignia. Mom hugged me, eyes warm but tinged with concern. "You look tired, honey. Are you okay?" I smiled. "Just a long flight, Mom." Dad stood across the room laughing with a retired admiral. He looked at me, gave a curt nod, polite. Not proud. Rachel glowed in her pressed Air Force blues, her new rank pins gleaming. She spotted me and smiled, but not the sisterly kind. "Oh, wow, Brittany. Didn't think you'd show," she said loud enough for others to hear. "Still holding it down at the old desk job? Has the Navy let you out of your cubicle yet?" I tightened my grip on my wine glass. "Work's been busy, Rachel," I replied evenly. She turned to a group of junior officers. "My sister's in naval intelligence, probably printing reports as we speak." Laughter followed. Mom tried to intervene. "Rachel, don't. Brittany's here to support you." But Rachel wasn't done. She never was. I took my seat quietly. Dinner dragged. Dad peppered Rachel with questions about her latest assignment, nodding along, raising his glass. Now that's the kind of impact a Wheeler officer makes. I stared at my plate, silent. What if they knew I'd just led a team out of Aleppo, that I'd saved 20 lives? But to them, I was Brittany, the desk job girl, until someone in that room saw me differently. I stayed quiet as the party shifted to speeches. Rachel stood under the warm glow of the chandeliers, raising her glass to the Air Force, to service, and to family. Her eyes skimmed right over me like I wasn't even there. The room applauded. I sat in silence, a shadow in the middle of their spotlight. But one man wouldn't stop looking at me. He sat at the next table over Air Force dress blues, captain's bars on his shoulders. I didn't know him, but he was clearly trying to place me. His brows furrowed, eyes narrowing with recognition. I looked down, swirling my wine, my heart pounding. Something was coming. I could feel it. Rachel had barely returned to her seat when it hit. His chair scraped back with a screech. The entire room hushed. He stood tall, polished shoes tapping softly on the floor. Then he saluted me. "Commander Wheeler," he said clearly, voice strong and reverent. "It's an honor, ma'am." The ballroom froze. Rachel's wine glass tilted, nearly spilling. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad dropped his silverware with a clatter. I stood instinctively, trained calm in my voice. "At ease, Captain." There was no more hiding. He stepped closer. "Ma'am, my unit was pinned down under heavy fire in Aleppo. Your SEAL team came in. You split your squad, drew the enemy out, and got us all home. I owe you my life." Rachel bolted upright, eyes wide. What she snapped. "My sister's in intel. She's not a SEAL." "That's absurd." I turned to face her. "It's not absurd, Rachel," I said, cold and steady. "I've been a SEAL commander for 6 years. I've led special ops teams for 2. Everything I've done was classified." The room held its breath. Every gaze landed on me. I wasn't the desk job sister anymore. And Rachel, she knew it. The room was still frozen after that salute. I stood tall, breathing deep and steady. I'd never intended for this to happen, especially not at a family celebration. But the truth had broken loose, and there was no putting it back. Rachel's voice sliced the silence. "You're serious. You're a SEAL commander." She said the words like they were punchlines to a bad joke. I met her gaze. "Yes, for 6 years. 2 of them leading my own team. I didn't tell you because I wasn't allowed." Dad stood slowly, his posture stiff like he was at a military tribunal. "Brittany, you went through real SEAL training, Hell Week, Bud, A.S." I nodded. 85% dropout rate. I made it through. I haven't failed a single mission. Mom sat frozen, clutching her glass, eyes wide and wet. "You've been in war zones, and we didn't even know to be worried," I said softly. "If I told you, Mom, I'd be putting you in danger." I did it because I believed in the mission, not because I wanted applause. Rachel scoffed, but this time there was no certainty in her voice. So you just let me call you a failure? Let the whole family believe you were nothing, just so you could drop this bomb now? Anger flared in me, but I kept my tone calm. You decided I was nothing, Rachel. I never asked for your approval. I did my job. You were too busy judging me to notice. Dad raised his hand, quieting us both. He turned to me, voice low. Why didn't you ever say anything your family? I looked at him, the man who didn't look up when I showed him my awards. Because, Dad, you never looked at me like someone worth hearing. It cracked the silence wide open. Mom whispered, voice trembling, we were blind. Brittany, I should have seen your strength a long time ago. Rachel stared down at her plate, silent for the first time. And me? For the first time in my life, I didn't have to prove a damn thing. They finally saw me. I was still standing there, eyes on me, when Captain Pierce stepped closer. His voice was slower, now measured. Ma'am, I don't think you know this, but your sister Rachel was in my unit at Aleppo. The air drained from the room. Rachel turned sharply. Her lips trembled. What? Pierce nodded. You were the intel officer on that op, right? I didn't put it together until now. But you were there, and Commander Wheeler's team saved all of us, including you. I didn't have to say anything. My silence was enough. Rachel looked like she'd been struck. She took a step back, arms falling limp. You were there? She asked, voice cracking. I nodded gently. I didn't know it was you at the time, but yes, your unit was on the list. We were dispatched. We got you out. Mom gasped, tears already flowing. Dad stood frozen, jaw tight. Rachel sank into her seat, her eyes locked on mine. Why didn't you say anything? She whispered. I took a breath, grounding myself. Because it wasn't about bragging. I didn't save that unit for recognition. I did it because it was the mission, whether the person I saved was a stranger or my sister. Captain Pierce stepped beside me, voice full of quiet conviction. Without her, we wouldn't have made it out. That op was a death trap. But she split her team, drew enemy fire, opened a path. I owe her my life. Rachel's head dropped. Her voice was barely audible. You saved me, and I called you a failure. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, not as a rival anymore, but as someone finally facing the truth. I don't need your apology, I said. I just need you to understand I never needed your approval. I only needed to do what was right. And for the first time, Rachel didn't argue. She didn't deflect. She just listened. After the truth came out, I stepped away to a quiet corner near the window. My phone buzzed, a secure line. Commander Foster. His voice was clipped, no small talk. Urgent situation. Wheels up, Eero 600 from Norfolk Naval. Be ready. I looked back at the room, still caught in stunned silence. Rachel was speechless, Mom and Dad lost in thoughts they'd never dared explore before. I returned to the table and set my glass down. Dad looked at me, his voice slower now. You're heading out again. I nodded. Tomorrow morning. The unit needs me. Mom placed her hand gently over mine, eyes still wet. Can't you stay a little longer? I squeezed her hand softly and shook my head. I only had 3 days. Didn't even make it through 2. Rachel stood by the door, her gaze steady. She didn't apologize, but this time her eyes weren't condescending. They held something else. Recognition, maybe even respect. Be careful, she said quietly. Then added slower. I'm proud of you. That was all I needed. The next morning, as I stepped outside with my bag, Dad stood on the porch in his old Navy jacket. For the first time, he didn't call me kid. He called me Commander Wheeler, and he saluted me, a proper salute. I returned it, my throat tight. Mom hugged me hard. Rachel stood behind, her arms crossed, nodding once. No grand apology, no tears, just the right words, at the right time. On the flight out of Virginia, I looked down at the tiny rooftops below and thought about the years I'd spent being dismissed, labeled the failure sister. But not anymore. I no longer needed their permission to be proud of who I was. I was a commander. I was Brittany Wheeler. And I was building a new definition of family from the ground up.